Recently, I've been watching all of these student-led protests happening across the country. But the reality is that these are not student-led at all. These are led through coercion by the staff and other adults. These very progressive teachers are indoctrinating kids and using them as political pawns, but in reality, what they're doing is dangerous and subversive. Welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm your host, Sergeant Q, and today I'm rolling solo. And so I want to share with you guys something that happened when I was a kid. I think I was a sophomore in high school, and I was just getting into the school, trying to find friends, learn, be part of the group. And there was a girl, always a girl. And I kind of liked her, and I think she kind of liked me. And I was trying to talk with her, and her church group were going out to protest on the weekend abortion. Now, at the time, I didn't have an opinion on this, and I didn't think much of it. I didn't really know a whole lot about it. But her and her friends and these big group from the school were going out on Saturday to do this protest, stand on the side of the road with signs and people would honk at you. I didn't really understand what I was doing, but I wanted to be part of the group. So I went. And when I got there, I felt so uncomfortable. But I didn't say anything and I didn't leave. I couldn't leave. I was there with the group. How could I leave? We didn't have cell phones back then, so I couldn't call anybody. So I sat there embarrassed and uncomfortable because they were shouting things and protesting, and I didn't know what I was doing. This is a big problem that I experienced when I was a kid. And I learned something that day, that I would never put myself in a position like that again. I would never protest something just to be part of the group. Now, I don't know if you've experienced anything like this, but I'm sure there's been times where you've gone along with the crowd only to feel regret and embarrassment moments later. It's not uncommon. I believe that the best way to teach kids how to protest is for their parents to be involved, so it doesn't conflict with their family values. This is something I believe is incredibly important. Now, at times when my kids were young, we went out and stood in protest for our Second Amendment rights. Went to the Capitol with a lot of people and protested. I don't think there's anything wrong. It's part of your civic duty to protest the things that you believe are unjust. It's part of being an American. It's fantastic. Where I draw the line is when you start to use kids as political props. More than that, you have outside agencies and agitators and activists who are specifically targeting these kids to come and protest. And we're seeing this happen with ICE right now, where you have all of these schools doing a walkout in protest of ICE. And I guarantee you that if you were to sit down and interview every one of those kids, they would have a very minimal understanding of what they're actually protesting. They're just repeating the things that have been told to them by these activists. And unfortunately, many of them are teachers. Yes, teachers that are claiming these are student-led protests. But in reality, you see it is the adults that are there that are the ones who are protesting. Now, this is infuriating parents. They are super upset, and they should be. Number one, you're putting these kids in harm's way. Number two, you're using them as political pawns. And number three, you're doing something that goes against their family values. This is a huge problem that we're seeing pop up this year, where these activists are using kids to protest, saying they're student-led protests, but all the signs, no matter what school it is, all the signs say the exact same thing. Same font, same letters, same photos, same chants. if these are organic and student led, wouldn't there be some differences in the protests, in what they're doing, in what they're saying? But no, it's all the same, which leads me to believe that these are outside agencies utilizing kids to be political pawns. Now, I did some research on this. So there's a couple of things to know. If this is happening in your school where your kid is at, there's a couple of things you need to know on the psychology side of what's actually happening in the brain. Now, some of these kids, they want to go. Well, a couple of reasons. One, I mean, you get out of class. So yeah, of course they're going to go. Try doing that on a Friday evening or a Saturday, and they've got to give up their own time to go and protest. Like, you're going to see far lower numbers of kids showing up to do that. But if they can do it and get out of class, I mean, why not? Why not just walk down the street and come back and yell stuff? Of course, I would much rather go do that than be in class. So that's the first problem. Okay. And number two, the problem that we see is that kids want to be part of a group. They want to be part of a homogenous group. And so if you've got these very loud voices pushing this agenda, pushing this narrative, even if kids don't really want to be part of it, like I didn't really want to be part of it, you feel really embarrassed and uneasy speaking out against the group. And as we see, it becomes very, very dangerous. I watched several videos where students were going against these anti-ICE protesters, saying, I don't want to be part of that. I don't believe in that. And they're being assaulted by other students. And you watch this happen, and the adults online are cheering the abuser on. They're cheering on the kids that are beating up these other kids because they don't believe in what they're doing. This is a huge problem that we see right now. And I think there need to be some laws enacted immediately to prevent adults from encouraging kids to protest. Now, if this is your own kid and you want to go and do it, absolutely. They're your kids. Absolutely, you can do it. But when this becomes a school sanctioned event and you're having outside agitators, outside organizations that are organizing these protests and getting the kids to go out there and do it, there needs to be laws put in place right now. Number one, it's super creepy that adults are showing up to manipulate and coerce kids to go out and protest and then being with them, kind of guiding them on what to do and what to say and where to go. That's so creepy on a fundamental level. It is so creepy and cringe that there are adults going out and doing this. It's just, it reminds me of the Pied Piper. We all know the story of the Pied Piper who led the kids like lemmings off a cliff, right? So this is so creepy. Number one, that adults would want to do that. There's just something wrong with them on a fundamental level where they want to go spend time with these teenagers to convince them to go protest. They're manipulating them is what they're doing. It's so creepy. And there need to be some laws enacted right away and heavy, heavy punishment for these organizations that are targeting these kids to use them as political pawns. And I will stand firm on this. It is so wrong and so backwards. We as a society need to push back against the schools, against these organizations that are doing this to our kids. In my town, small town, Enumclaw, Washington, we made national news because these outside agitators from Seattle, people drove from Seattle 90 minutes, about 90 minutes, maybe an hour, if you can get good traffic, out into the country, into farmland, very conservative area, to help these kids protest. That just spontaneously happened. The kids did it on their own, but you have these outside agitators coming in from Seattle to guide these kids along with the teachers to go to City Hall and protest against ICE. The same people that were at a protest walking with these kids had been in Enumclaw weeks earlier, speaking at the city council meeting against ICE. They're not even from the city. They're an hour away. And they drove all that way so they could give public comment. And then they just so happened to show up on the day that these protests are happening with these kids? I don't think so. I don't buy it. The police need to investigate these people. The government needs to investigate these organizations that are using kids as political pawns. Here's the problem right here, you guys. This is so disgusting and deplorable. During that walkout, the kids were so amped up and so agitated by these adults that they actually began attacking them, attacking people who were just there, filming it, reporting on it, wanting to put this out there. They started attacking them. Two students got arrested for assault because people were just standing there disagreeing with them. So the people who organized it and agitated it drove all the way from Seattle out here to small little Enumclaw, Washington, need to be held accountable for what these kids did. Now, the kids are already being held accountable, as they should be. You cannot just start beating on somebody because you disagree with them. But here's part of the problem. They studied this many, many years ago at Super Bowls. So after a city would win a Super Bowl, people would take to the streets and party, and they would turn into a riot, and they would light cars on fire and break poles for light poles, and all these things would happen. Like, why would these people do this? These people are construction workers, and they're nurses, and they're just regular people. Why would they go out and create anarchy? Because there's a psychological phenomenon that when you're part of a larger group, you don't feel socially responsible for your actions. It's just what happens. When you're part of a larger group, you will push the boundary, you will go farther, you will do more things that are illegal because you feel like you're not going to get caught. Like you're part of this big group. And so somehow that absolves you of responsibility. There have been countless studies on this actually regarding like Super Bowls and soccer matches and things like that, where people get way out of control afterwards. It's a big problem. Now, I did a little bit more research and I'm going to share it with you. So this comes from the American Heritage Foundation. And it was Thomas Lindsay held a webinar, the Heritage Foundation, and he was talking about a study that was published, and it's in the Texas Public Policy Foundation study. And we'll put the link in here for you guys. But Robert himself, he said that he was once a proponent of Teachers of Action Civics. And he wrote this, and I quote, "It has grown into a, quote, manipulative and cynical use of children as political props in the service of causes they understand superficially, if at all," end quote. That's what this study found. That's what he's talking about, is that these teachers that are going out and teaching civics, that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're not teaching kids how to think, how to protest. They're teaching them what to think and what to protest. These very progressive teachers are indoctrinating kids and using them as political pawns to teach civics. But in reality, what they're doing is dangerous and subversive. So Peter Wood, the president of the National Association of Scholars, pointed out that the new civics is in fact a form of anti-civics and does not teach how our government works or even the critical role that citizens play in self-governing republics. Rather, it simply teaches them how to be activists. So these very progressive teachers are getting into academia and they are manipulating kids, not teaching them how the government works, just turning them into little activists. And we see this on college campuses, and they had great success there. So guess what? Now they're moving into high schools and even middle schools. There's a middle school just 45 minutes north of us. Exact same thing happened. Kids walked out. You had journalists there. One of the journalists was physically assaulted and attacked by the students. These schools need to be held responsible. These teachers and activists that say they're volunteering to help these kids on their youth created walkouts, I don't believe it. It's 100% lie. These kids would never be able to organize themselves into something like this. Anybody who's worked with kids, and I work with them a lot, try and get 15 kids to put on a bake sale, forget about it. It's never going to happen. It's going to be a complete disaster. And you're telling me that these same students that couldn't hold a bake sale on their own are suddenly going to be able to organize these protests through all these different schools at the same time with the same message and the same sign, doing the same thing? No way. Absolutely not possible. Absolutely not possible. These are teachers, educators, and activists using our children as political pawns, and it's having a detrimental effect on their mental health. Let me break it down. This has been such a problem that they began to study the youth that were part of these protests. And this is what they found. They found that when students were involved in protests that were coercive and manipulated by adults making the decisions, it made them feel disenfranchised, disempowered, and used. And that's exactly how I felt all those years ago when I was at my very first protest. I felt like I was being used and I had no power. Now, they studied these kids in Egypt specifically, and what they found were there were larger amounts of anxiety and depression and worry about the future from these kids who were involved in this activism, because their minds are such sponges at that age, and they're being manipulated and coerced by these adults who have an agenda, and it is severely damaging their mental health. Every single one of these studies that I read, the students had increased insomnia, every single one of them, because they were worried about the future. When you have high cortisol, you have these experiences, you have high cortisol, and you go to bed, your brain doesn't unwind. It doesn't let you rest. It wakes you up with worry. It wakes you up with anxiety. It wakes you up with depression. And that's how you live your life. The less sleep you get, that's good quality sleep, the less toxins are washed out of your brain. So when you wake up, you feel cloudy, you feel uneasy, you have low cognitive functioning, and you're not able to focus on your studies. This isn't an opinion. These are absolute facts. Look up sleep hygiene. During the day, you have all these decisions you make. And when you make these decisions, little synapses are firing off. Those little electrical impulses leave material in your brain that's waste product. At the end of the day, you feel tired. It's called decision fatigue. That's why you're like, what do you want to have for dinner? I don't know. I can't make one more decision. Decision fatigue. When you go to sleep and you sleep well, your brain has the glia cell. The glia cell is your janitor in your brain, and it opens up, allows your cerebral spinal fluid to flow freely through your brain, washing away all those toxins so you feel refreshed in the morning and you're able to conduct business as usual. But when you have high cortisol, high adrenaline, high stress, you don't sleep well. Your sleep is disturbed, which doesn't allow your brain to properly process out all of those toxins. So when you wake up, you have lower cognitive functioning. Studies show that people with disturbed sleep and insomnia, when they wake up in the morning, they have the same cognitive functioning as if they were DUI. That's what these activists are doing to your children. They're manipulating them, they're using them as pawns, and they're severely damaging their mental health. So what can you do about it? Well, number one, if you're a parent, you need to be involved in what your kids are doing at school. You can't just have a hands-off approach anymore. Not with these radical activists targeting your kids. And you think it's not happening to you, you better think again. You better start having conversations with your kids. You better find out what they're being taught. You better find out the conversations those teachers are having. You better find out what extracurricular activities they're leading your kids to go and do. You better start asking these questions, or you're going to get a phone call from a police officer saying your kid just went to jail and got arrested for assault at a protest. And you're going to be like, protest? What protest? This kid should be in school. That's what these parents are waking up with. These student led protests are not student led. They're being manipulated by their teachers, by these activists. So that's the number one thing you can do. And the second thing you can do is if your kids are interested in protesting, go take them, show them how to protest, how to do it the right way. Because you know that your actions and your activities have direct consequences, and you can share that with them. You're not going to let your kids get out of hand. You're not going to let them light things on fire and throw it in the street. You're not going to let them swing and throw punches at other people. So if they want to be activists, they want to protest, go take them, show them how to do it the right way. Now, here's a warning. Stop taking little kids out. I see 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, babies going out to protest where they're tear gassing people. What is wrong with you as a parent that you would take your kid to a situation like that? Okay. So I'm not talking that kind of extremism as a parent. That is child abuse. You know that tear gas is being used. You know they're shooting off less than lethal rounds. Why would you take your children to that? That is abuse. Okay. There is a right way to civilly protest. I'm all about protesting. Go do it and be civil. But don't use your kids as political pawns. Don't take your kids in dangerous situations. So that's the warning that I have for parents. Now, I want to encourage you to take the next step. The next step is contacting your school, finding out if they have these protests planned, or what is their plan if something like this was to happen. Don't be reactive, be proactive. Call your school, call the principal, find out what's going on, find out what their plan is, find out if any of these activists are operating inside your school, whether they be faculty, teachers, or some outside organization. Find out what is going on in your sphere of influence. And if you don't like it, say something about it. All right. For the Mental Health Janitors, I'm Sergeant Q, and I'm out.